While Europe had its industrial revolution, Asia has stagnated. China and Japan were both self-sufficient, and so they isolated themselves from the rest of the world. This put them both behind Europe technologically, and when they discovered this, they reacted in radically different ways. China responded by trying to further isolate itself and hold on to tradition, while Japan fully embraced Western culture and government. During the late 1700s and early 1800s, China was at a standstill. They were self-sufficient, but they were not exposed to the new technological advances of the Industrial Revolution. Also during this time, Great Britain wanted to increase the trade between them and China to get some of their resources like silk and porcelain, but China didn't want anything from them. In the 1820s, Britain was finally able to find a resource that China would take: opium. Opium is a highly addictive drug that was banned for both China and Britain, but merchants were able to smuggle it into China to sell it. By 1835, over 12 million people were addicted to the drug. The Qing Emperor needed to end this problem, so in 1839 he wrote to Queen Victoria asking her to stop the trade of opium, but she denied. Due to the continuing trade of opium, China decided to go to war with Britain in 1839. This was known as the Opium War. This war went until 1842. China was losing badly because Britain was more advanced militarily and technologically, so they decided to make a peace treaty. This was known as the Treaty of Nanjing. This treaty gave Britain the land of Hong Kong. This led to another treaty signed in 1844 with the US that gave them and other European countries extraterritorial rights. This meant that there would be more ports, and when they were at Chinese ports like Guangzhou, they did not have to obey the Chinese law but the law of their own country. Also during this time, the population grew out of control, which led to widespread famines. The population grew 30% bigger from 1790 to 1850. These problems led to people rebelling against the Qing dynasty. One of these people was Hong Xiuquan. In the 1830s, he made an army to go against the Qing dynasty. This uprising was known as the Taiping Rebellion. In 1853, Hong made an army of 1 million peasants which he used to take over the city of Nanjing and make it his capital. Hong soon left his family in charge, which led to fighting between the government officials. With internal fighting and battles between the Qing and the French, the Taiping government fell in 1864, killing 20 to 30 million. The fighting of the Taiping Rebellion and the intrusion of the foreign powers, the Qing court was debating whether to westernize or keep tradition. The ruler during this time, Dowager Empress Cixi, said that they would keep tradition, but try to make China self-sufficient again. She did this by enforcing the self-strengthening movement, which made limited updates to China's education, diplomatic, and military system. This didn't help because China was still weak, so countries would easily be able to come in and beat them, leading to more peace treaties. More peace treaties being made meant that those countries had a bigger influence on China's economy and ruling. This was known as the sphere of influence. The US was afraid that countries a part of China would divide it into colonies, which would shut out the US's trade. The US made the open door policy, which would give all the countries an equal right to trade with China. The Emperor Gongxu wanted reforms in China. These reforms, however, would weaken the Qing officials, so they decided to bring back the Dowager Empress, who got rid of these reforms and arrested Gongxu. Anger arose from this and the arrival of foreigners and their beliefs, so a group formed called the Boxers. In 1900, the Boxers went to Beijing and surrounded the European section of the city and kept it under siege for several months. In August of that year, even though the Dowager agreed with the Boxers, she sent a foreign army to crush them. The Boxers did not win, but this led to a wide sense of nationalism. The Qing court realized that they needed to make reforms, so from 1905 to 1906, the Dowager sent a select group to tour countries like Japan and US. When they returned, they decided that they should form a government that is a constitutional monarchy like Japan. China faced more problems for the next 40 years.
In the 17th century, Japan had reached self-sufficiency under the feudalistic Tokugawa shoguns, and had isolated itself from everyone except for China, Korea, and the Dutch Republic. This isolation was ended by the arrival of American Commodore Matthew Perry, who delivered a letter from the current U.S. President Millard Fillmore, who threatened to return with a war fleet if Japan did not accept the United States terms. Japan responded by writing the Treaty of Kanagawa, which opened up 2 ports for American trade, and by 1860, Japan opened those ports to all Europeans. This led to a large increase in Japanese nationalism and opened the door for the Japanese Empire to emerge. Many Japanese people were angry over the opening of these ports and showed up by rallying around the young emperor Mushihitu. Mushihitu promoted modernizing Japan and sent scholars to many European nations to study their system of government and technology. This is known as the Meiji Restoration. Japan uses information to catch up with Europe technologically and militarily, boasting one of the most advanced armies in the world.
Go.
Japan then set its eyes on Korea and forced them to trade with them in 1876, and signed agreements with China in 1885, agreeing that neither country would bring an army into Korea. When China broke these rules in 1894, Japan responded quickly and efficiently, decimating Chinese navy and taking over large swaths of land in the Sino-Japanese War. In 1904, Japan continued its warlike path and went to war with Russia over a dispute over the land above Korea known as Manchuria. In the war, Japan destroyed 2 Russian fleets and forced them out of Manchuria, gaining more land for themselves. After these 2 wars, Japan had established itself as a powerful empire just in time for World War I. However, before World War I starts, Japan had time to make Korea a protectorate before finally annexing them or making them a part of Japan. Japan closed Korean newspapers and schools and forced them to study Japanese history, culture, and even read in Japanese. This forcible suppression of Korean culture and ideas led to strong nationalist movements on the peninsula. However, these actions were ignored at large by the rest of the world, as many other empires had turned their minds toward conquest as well.